Hey Collective, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be dedicated towards the subject of the purpose of loneliness and how many people overlook the blessings that actually entails. And the focus of this particular piece is going to be on why we feel loneliness and what it's actually there to serve. And essentially the point that I was going to make with this is that, have you ever noticed that when you truly find yourself in a lonely situation, it's always a blessing? If you really think about it, it's always a point in your life where you are missing something of importance, and it's an indication that you have an opportunity to grow, essentially. And it tends to center around either obstacles that become opportunities if you look at it from the right vantage point. And with the subject of loneliness, I've noticed that for a lot of people it indicates a very, very severe need to course correct in some way, shape, or form. So when we look at loneliness, what I wanted to point out for this video going into the weekend is that it actually serves as a way a lot of times to open your heart or to open your brain to something new. It usually comes at a point of isolation, whether it is what we're going through right now with the P word, or whether it's actually something governed from within. A point in your life where the divine universe is saying to you or pointing something out to you in your shadow side that needs your attention. And in particular, it usually comes at a point when you have become very, very successful in your own right. You are a person of worldly, you have a worldliness to you, and you have this ability to look at the life and have become something of your own maverick, someone who stands in your own power. And there normally comes a point in that where the resolution becomes very clear. Yes, but are you happy? And at that point, the subject of loneliness enters your mind. Now, most people realize that that's a point where they need to look for a mate, or they need to find outside sources to help them be more resolved with themselves. But my point with this is that sometimes loneliness is an indication that you have to confront the fear of being alone before it opens the door for you to gain entry to something much greater, a love or whatnot. And so as we go through this pan word, as we're all in the frying pan, one of the things I notice is that a lot of us are being forced into isolation, into a almost celibate state. I wanted to say celebratory state, but that's later. Celibate state, where we're having to really, really find it within ourselves to stand in our own power, face judgment if that's what is in front of us, and to do it in a way that's very elegant and in gratitude. And that can be very complicated and challenging to a lot of people. So the point I would like to make with loneliness is that it's a point of grace. It's an opportunity for you to truly explore the deepest parts of yourself and truly come to understand what you hold value to. What is it that you bring to the world? What is it that your highest self is trying to communicate to you? In a world that we exited, the old world that we used to live in, we were so busy that nobody was even walking with their attention to what they were doing. People were texting, and we watched a woman fall into a fountain and stuff like that. And we were so constantly busy that when we went on vacation, we were taking our phones and we were constantly at the beck and call of someone else. And so we never had a choice but to be constantly bombarded with noise and stimuli. But now, as we've gone through the looking glass, if you will, we find ourselves in a situation where we must become comfortable with the idea of isolation and being alone. And so though the world sees it as a huge obstacle, and though it can be a bit of a daunting task to face oneself, there is no greater reward than coming out of that situation whole, meaning whole. And what I mean by that is, when we encounter these obstacles, when we encounter these isolatory periods in our lives, you must understand that it is your golden ticket to something greater. It's your point where you are transferring from one train to another in destiny. And you have an opportunity in that moment that is being given to all of us to take a chance and do something either new or take something that honors you in a way that fulfills what it is that you're doing here in this wonderful academy of life. And so when we look at these transitional phases, one of the greatest things that we can do for ourselves is to take the time to face our shadow nature, those things that we may not necessarily like about ourselves. If we're in that moment and we're finding ourselves deeply, deeply moved by the fact that we don't have a partner, or we don't have monetary, or whatever it is, materialism, or we don't have this or we don't have that, then it gives us an opportunity to develop a plan in an alignment state with your higher self. And there's nothing more sacred than that moment. So though we are all encountering this kind of deeper, lower vibrational need to kind of overcome that, I'm cautioning everybody to remember that in truth, I would rather you honor that. Take the time to really get to know yourself, really understand what it is that's driving you at this moment, and find outlets that allow you to make the transition more effectively and to do it at a higher vibration. One of the things that we're finding as we do this, for those of us who are very comfortable being alone, is it is a blessing, because I am always in tune with my higher self, and it allows me to make really quick decisions without any type of drama. It allows me to know that even if something doesn't work out, I don't take it personally. It's not meant to be. And when you have that sense of security within oneself, then your life goes so much more effectively. And so as we encounter the loneliness era, where we are being aligned again, we find that we're giving an opportunity here to truly expand how we think, how we speak, what we think, what we speak about, what our path is, where we want to go, and we do it in a way that honors something greater than just you and me. It honors something higher. And in these moments, isn't that the greatest blessing that you can have? Is the ability to truly, truly find oneself in alignment with something that wants the best for you. So instead of looking at it as though we are in a state of contradictory flux where there's no control, we don't know where we're going, we don't know this and that, what if I was to tell you that that is the purpose of this time, is to understand that you don't know because you're not in alignment. If you were in alignment, then anything that came at you would be secondary. It would be something that you already knew intuitively that you would overcome. And that's not like a bragging thing, but that's one of the great blessings I have, is that whatever it is, whether it's God playing with the Etch-a-Sketch in California and an earthquake hitting, or a tsunami hitting somewhere in the world, or this pan word going around, all of it is just superfluous. That's just superfluous. It has nothing really of weight to add to my life, because I know that whatever it is will just be a test. And the test of myself is, will I be in alignment to make the right choices in those moments? That is something that only loneliness can answer for each of us. It is that ultimate blessing that all human beings are being given at this moment in order to course correct our lives for ourselves and for the collective. But what does that mean if we're not first alone and able to actually understand what it is that we bring to the universe? What is it that the universe is trying to give us? And so that balancing act that we are trying to actually get together and get done is something that can only happen when you are centered and in a state of private bliss, where you are allowed to think, act, and do whatever you want. If you want to sing in those moments, then you sing. Who's there to judge you? No one. If you want to paint, then that's your creative outlet. If you want to write a script, or you want to do this, or you want to do that, all of it serves a grander design that you may not be consciously aware of. But whatever you actually actively work at in those moments of loneliness is indicative of where you probably need to be looking at in your own life. If you are a painter and you find yourself suddenly wanting to paint pictures of families or of a house, then you are looking towards stability. If you are suddenly finding yourself painting, if you're a female or male for that matter, a figure of a nude, if you're trying to somehow create the body and understand what the dynamics are to the proportions, then you're probably looking at a partner, and you're looking at particular aspects to that partner that you find appealing. If you are a singer and you're suddenly finding yourself singing sad songs that are really, really kind of really tragic, and finding yourself in that environment, then you are creating an ambiance for yourself of trying to work through something dark. If you are in a state of bliss and you are suddenly singing Christmas songs and it's the middle of Halloween, or not better yet, Easter, then, which would be kind of interesting, but you see what I'm saying? If you're in that moment, then you're celebrating life and you're thinking of family. If you are in a state of loneliness and you suddenly find yourself, what I do sometimes is hog watching, where you're like at the beach and, watching the hogs pass by, and, I've made that joke where you're like, oh, the hog looked impressive, but then you see the base and you're like, oh. Are you then in heat? Like, what is going on? It's always indicative, but you won't know the indicative. But you won't know, anywho, you won't know unless you are able to find your own inner monologue speaking loudly to you. And so as we encounter this wonderful era of transition, and as we look at each other and we find people who speak our language and are high vibrational, we're finding ourselves in a place where we're looking for people who match a vibration of creation, of creativity, I should say, of love and of unity. And like personally speaking, it comes through this alone phase. Now, I spend a lot of time by myself. It's something that it's just a spiritual thing that I do for me, and it's something that connects me to something much higher. It gives me wisdom that others won't see, or don't want to see, I should say, and it gives me the ability to find square roots to things. Right now, my big focus was, for a period of time, was on my concern about the fact that a lot of people are probably not going to be able to reproduce children after this goes around. And it suddenly came to me in my alone phase on a walk by myself looking at flowers that it's not my job to get involved in that dynamic. That is between every individual and something higher than me. My job is to just speak something that brings unity and brings a worldliness to a world that feels isolated, and try to find a vehicle that will allow me to do this either on a daily basis or on a weekly basis or whatever it is, like a show or whatnot, that gets to enough people, that brings them the opportunity to be uplifted with humanity as opposed to weighted down. There's a struggle, there's a tension going on that is meant to be, that exists between the positive and the negative charge. Well, I should do it this way because they're not above each other, but they're coming at each other like this, and they're building the tension in order to get us as a collective to move. It's going to break, right? And that's because we're stagnant, we're stuck. And so only in a state of aloneness, where we consider it lonely, will you be able to understand that it has to break. And so it gives you the strength in order to overcome whatever it is, whether it's an earthquake where the break goes like this and one of the plates goes up, and earthquake and tsunami, or whether it's something that brings us closer to God, Allah, or whoever you want it to be in a pan word created by humans. There are consequences to all actions. And so as we navigate these uncharted waters, the greatest single danger that we have is to find the isolation to it as a burden, because it distracts you and makes you look down. It makes you look at life in a negative. It makes you feel like woe is me, victimized. And it doesn't allow you to see long term and what the benefits are if we are able to overcome these challenges. And so when we when we look at our lives and we deal with the subject of loneliness, I want all of us to band together and remember this. It is a blessing of biblical proportions. It allows you to become one with something you don't understand, and it can only happen when you are alone. So the next time you find yourself feeling a little bit more than down about it, I want you to think about what it is that's in your vicinity. What is it that is bringing your attention into that? Is it that you miss partnership? Is it that you miss friendship? Is it that you miss school? Is it that you miss work? All of those are indicative of areas where you're probably lacking. And so why are we lacking in those areas? Instead of being victimized by our current situation, why not be empowered? Face yourself. Face yourself full focus in the mirror and say, why am I feeling down about being by myself? Where is that insecurity coming from? Because I'm watching other people that are completely alone excel. And I'm not trying to compete. I'm just trying to find out why I'm not feeling comfortable alone. Because here's the thing. You can't find these unions that everybody is dreaming about. You can't find these other partners that everybody's dreaming about. You can't find these business partners that you're dreaming about if you're not whole yourself. And so if you can't be alone, meaning you can't be whole on your own, then how will you ever attract the other whole partner that you seek? It's impossible. Because you're constantly worried about you, so how can you be there for them? When two wholes come together, they take care of themselves, and they're drawn to taking care of each other. It's a natural indication to create a divine union, where two, the infinity ring, becomes one, the omega. And so as we go through that portal, as we encounter these things, if you are whole, then love will find you. It will be the only thing that centers your energy. That's one of the things that I'm going through right now, is that the only thing that distracts me every now and then is the fact that I don't have someone to speak to on that intimate level. It could be a best friend. It doesn't have to be sexual. It can be a best friend, or it can be a business associate, or it can be a lifelong partner. I have a feeling it's a lifelong partner, but it has to be the right fit for my high vibration, which brings a whole different video we're going to do later about dating high vibrational people and how it's like really hard when someone's like a negative Nancy and doesn't live in gratitude and grace. I can't be around it. You know what I mean? Like, so that's a conscious choice that my soul is making in order to keep our vibration high, because the blessings of being alone to me far outweigh the blessings of being anchored down by someone who's not at that level. You want somebody to be uplifting with you. You want to have the wings that flap up, not the wings that flap you down, or that doesn't flap at all. And that can happen when people become codependent. But when you have two people who are finding themselves in whole states, and they come together, they create an infinity ring. And before you know it, they become one. And that's where families come from. And from that, the children are born. And so as we look for that, one of the things that I'm struggling with is that the high vibrational people that match my vibration are very few people, like very, very few, like maybe a handful of people on the entire planet. And knowing that can make me feel very, like, you know, like it's never going to happen. But because I am who I am, and because of how strong I am with the alone factor, and how many blessings that have come to me from honoring the loneliness at first, it became something great. I now know that it's inevitable. When you see the world as a full-fledged human being in alignment with a higher self, understanding that there's multiple truths to all things, then anything that comes to you is a pivot. It's not a problem. It's just a pivot. You just go, okay, well, I was going this way, but I guess we're going to go this way. Or I'm going this way, let's do an about face. I've screwed up. And instead of being like all like negative Nancy about it, and oh, I did it again, and all that stuff, and being lower vibrational, a higher vibrational person will immediately go, oh, well, I guess I screwed up. And then it's jovial. But you can't get there unless you go through the portal of loneliness. Because when you're alone, God can speak to you. When you're alone, science will make sense to you. When you are alone, spirituality becomes something that you want to share with the world. It is through the portal of loneliness that most of you will find your personal salvation. And when you do that, you will attract the energy that suits your actual interest in who you've become. Because every obstacle, every person that's gone through challenges becomes a sacred being because of the value they bring to the universe. They've learned and they've gotten over it. That's the journey of life. So, when you're feeling alone, find out why you're feeling alone. It's not always good to find someone else, because then you might have two lonely people who then try to be codependent and the other one makes the other whole. You can't do that. Well, you shouldn't do that. You can. I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but the point I'm trying to make, though, is that when you are in these amazing opportunities that seem like obstacles, have you made the most of it? Have you looked at what it is that you're truly afraid of, or what it is that's making you uncomfortable with being alone? Is it the fact that you feel like you're running out of time? Then the question becomes, what are you doing with the time? I know I just triggered a bunch of people. Or if you have been like I did for a while, which is focused on my physical world, and I mean this wonderful spiritual mission that I went on completely collapsed my attachment to the material world, because I went from making thousands of dollars, sometimes a day, to nothing. And I did it for a year and a half on spiritual mission in order to better align myself with a higher calling. Not everybody can do that, but I'm saying I wouldn't have been able to become who I've become had I not just cut it off. You know, it's one of the most fascinating things I've ever done in my life, is the fact that I actually believe, I actually trusted the divine when the divine said, I'm sending you on a spiritual mission, and it's a boot camp. You're not going to like it, but you're going to appreciate it at the end. And I mean, not even 3 months into it, I was like, I love this experience, blah, 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 because I didn't have any phone connection. I didn't have anything that I was relying on. There was no one to talk to. So it was a point where I had to survive on my own. And what it did is it reminded me that I am the prize. But you can't know that unless you face your shadow. And so I had a crash course that a lot of people will probably never get the opportunity to do. It was something handed to me by something sacred that wanted me to remind myself that I am sacred and that I am strong enough to do what is needed of me at this time as we go through this. Because now the collective has to go through this portal too. So instead of getting Debbie Downer about it, I wanted you guys to see the blessing in what you are overcoming and realize that instead of overcoming it, why don't you just become it? Celebrate it. And from that, the trees will grow that will bring the light and the energy to the world. It's something very important that I think all of us really need to think about right now. Life is not ending. It is beginning for those who want it to. But how would you know that if you are afraid to be alone? All truth and all answers funnel through those moments. That's it for me, guys. Have a great day. Bye.